Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 16th Board of Selectmen meeting. It's a little after 6:30 p.m. 3 out of the 4 selectmen are present while we are efforting Mr. Kalenda, who is away on business, but he had filled out a remote participation form, so we are hoping that he joins us very soon via telephone. I do want to welcome our newest board member, Lisa Braccio.
Thank you.
One of the winners in the election last week. Mr. Kalenda was re-elected as well. But Lisa, welcome, and we look forward to good things together. I know I spent some time at our last meeting, talk about the final meeting of the last board as it was comprised and the good things that we did, and I'm looking forward to good things with this board as well.
Absolutely, thank you.
Welcome.
And I'm so looking forward to it. Somebody works on a different brainwave.
All right, so our first scheduled appointment tonight is a joint meeting with the Southborough Housing Authority regarding tenant election regulations. We have representatives here from the Housing Authority. Welcome. Thank you. So this request initially came about because of concern with the membership of the Housing Authority and I guess decisions that had been made not to hold re-election for one of the positions. So that was absent from this year's ballot, and then the question came about, how do we address that with the Housing Authority moving forward? We have since received clarification from the Secretary of State's office, which
Have
They
you
have-
seen it? They haven't seen it?
they have not seen that yet. Okay?
You can
So-
just tell us.
I will tell you, it's good news.
We're auditory learners.
So the guidance that is from the Director of the Elections Division within the Secretary of State's office, it's that until such time as the tenant member election process is sorted out, the person whose term was due to expire this year will remain on the board. So that does not need to be a Board of Selectmen appointment. It does, I think that, and they had suggested that it be an affirmative statement of the board. So I will move that our board affirmatively state that we would like to have Ms. Surratt continue in that role until the election process is sorted out and until that tenant election is held and a new person is duly elected and qualified. But again, until then, that Ms. Surratt continue, as recommended and suggested by the Secretary of State's office. I will make that motion.
I'll second it. I have a question on it. So it's a one-year appointment?
It is, so it's not an appointment per se, but it's just affirming that that person will continue until the process is sorted out.
All right, so if it's not sorted out by next year, is it a vacancy again? I just think we need to be very clear what we're doing here.
I would say it's not, because my understanding of,
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, if you could use a microphone.
Robert Jackowitz, my understanding is that the prior law was that the person who was there could stay until someone else was elected or appointed.
That's correct.
So that this would just be an ongoing until someone else is either elected or appointed.
Right. So if DHCD takes 3 years, as state agencies likely do to some of these things, then Ms. Surratt would continue serving in that capacity until a process is set up for this tenant election.
Okay. I have some hesitation about it. As you know, we served when we got citizens' participation for the Housing Authority when it started off.
What is,
We actually already have a tenant on the board, Lynn Marino. We have a tenant on the board already, so,
Mrs. Surratt,
no, another tenant.
you have two?
Jean Chappelle?
Jean Chappelle's our other tenant, yeah. So
All
it
right.
just so happened that Mary
All right,
was-
as long as we're not going to be shifting this around again. I'll support,
Oh, okay.
I understand what's happening, but I have some concerns that I think we could have met the ballot deadline as a precautionary thing.
Yeah, the state
Right.
the state did
I
not
know.
allow.
I don't agree with what they did. I understand that, but I think, in fairness, I think it was short-sighted on their part, I think I
Oh,
can
we
say
couldn't
that.
agree more.
That's, and Mrs. Surratt has been a representative of Shopsy. She can continue as that role, correct? She's a very valuable representative.
Yeah, I don't
Alright.
think there's any
There would be no
conflict on
reason that she couldn't.
All right, so I think that needs to be included in the letter, that she's participated for the last 4 years, and she's consistent, and I really would hate to lose her at this point. We have too much happening.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's the rep for the Housing Authority.
Yes, and that won't change.
Ms. Brascio, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comment? All those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
thank you.
Thank you for coming. Our next item on the agenda under scheduled appointments is a 7 o'clock hearing for the new liquor license. It is about 6:37 right now, so we're gonna hold off until 7 o'clock, the posted time for that. I will jump ahead under consent agenda item number 5 for award and sign short-term notes for the treasurer while Mr. Ballantyne is here.
I'll second that.
Evening, Brian, how are you?
Good, how are you? This will only take a minute just to catch you up. You may recall we've done this actually a couple times in August and the previous October. We started bonding some short-term notes, various projects. We started with the Choate lights, added the fire truck, added the DPW underground tanks, and of course the Burnett House, the CPC project. We added that. So we have 4 projects ongoing. As you know, the notes run short-term until we do a full bond sale. The notes are up this Friday, actually, so we'll be paying them, and we'll be renewing them for another year. They will come due next May of 18. At that time, we'll probably do a bond sale, which to formally do long-term debt on these. And I'm anticipating at that time, we may have some engineering and architectural amounts to draw down on the public safety building at that time. So I'll be in front of you again a year from now, doing the same thing and collecting. I think I've added 12 signatures this time, but typically the way it works is the board does take a vote to approve the bonds, and it's just signatures. I hand them out, and you guys can continue your discussion as you're signing, and if, you know, that's the end of it. These projects aren't all funded by tax levy money. The CPC and the fire truck are actually non-tax levy monies. So the interest and costs associated with those projects will be borne by the other funding methods that are available to them. But I'll keep you updated. The next one will be the more important one next May on the public safety building, and it'll be a bigger discussion, I think, at that time.
Any questions, comments?
But I would ask you that you just vote to approve the bonds as presented, and that's that.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that the board support the treasurer collector to sign the short-term borrowing notes as outlined this evening.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Brian.
Every single tab, yep. Close it.
All right. So do we want to continue with consent agenda item? I noticed Mr. Wilson here. We have an item to reappoint Mr. Wilson as veterans agent through April 30th, 2018.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Mr. Wilson. We also have Public Safety Committee members here tonight as well. Why don't we jump to them while they're here as well? We have the draft charge for the Public Safety Building Committee that has been distributed, and there are also appointments to consider for membership to the Public Safety Building Committee. We have received a number of applications and interest in that committee to date. Per the website, I think we have allowed people to apply up until the 19th of this month.
Yes.
So there technically is still time available for citizens from the town that have interest in joining that committee to do so. So why don't we start with the charge? If there are questions or comments on the charge as it was distributed?
I have the original that was in the packet, that hasn't changed,
That has
correct?
not
Other than
changed.
the suggestions that were,
No, that has not
Suggested.
changed.
I don't believe a Board of Selectmen representative should be on the committee, because if there's any outstanding issues or oversight control or complaints, they would most likely surface to us. And if one of us is sitting on the board, it really limits the participation of others, because they could question a quorum. So I would suggest that Mark Purple be that individual that represents the board, that we eliminate the Board of Selectmen as a member, and the Advisory Board Committee member. If they sit, they could be ex officio in the advisory capacity, but I would prefer that it would not be an Advisory Board member either. And if you go down terms of the organization, 1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet down, the committee shall not have a direct budget of their own, but may request funds for specific purposes through the town meeting process. I'm not sure what the town meeting process is. I would think it'd be more town administrative procurement process.
It is, the town, so and if you read further down,
Yes, to me it-
essentially, the selectmen are the awarding authority for all procurements.
So could we
And-
delete that statement that I just read?
You can, I mean, so the committee does not have a budget. The
Right.
committee budget is essentially the authorization, the borrowing authorization that was set by town meeting. So if,
Could we move it down? Or just identify they don't have a budget? And any procurement would have to go before,
I mean, it's
Town
really,
administrator?
yeah, I mean,
or
to
procurement officer?
your point, you may not need, you may not need that point, but that's up to the board if it's something that you feel that you'd like to eliminate.
And the last, as far as duties, the Board of Selectmen shall be the awarding authority for any and all procurement recommended by the committee. Wouldn't that be your role, since you're the procurement officer?
So, but the Board of Selectmen have to award the contract, so if this committee, the building committee is going to make a recommendation to hire an owner's project manager, that's gonna be a fairly substantial contract, and obviously that will come to this board for approval, and the management, payment, and everything else of that contract is gonna fall to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Which is kind of why, just, to one other point, if you're gonna take the selectmen's rep off of this 9 members, don't put me in, leave me as an,
No, you're an ex official.
right, so,
Sorry.
right, but you said take the selectmen and put me in, and no, leave me as the ex officio. I think it'd be
Right.
better to have, members of the community and everything that can serve in that capacity, especially in a voting capacity.
So just to clarify then, you're recommending that membership stay at 9, but that it be 9 at-large representatives of the community?
I'm flexible with that number. I'm just looking at what our role is and how we could,
And did you want to add advisory? I think advisory as an ex officio?
I did see a letter, I agree with that as well, that they're not a sitting member.
Well, I think that's what you would say. I'm just trying to, I'm keeping my scorecard over here.
Well, I've been part of other projects, and if they go over, or if there's a need to go to a future town meeting, I think they've put themselves in a position they don't want to be on as an advisory board member, but that's how I look at it.
Any comments? Lisa?
Yes, actually, I agree with Mrs. Faniff, and I don't believe the Board of Selectmen need a representative on this committee as well. I know I personally will be attending all the meetings anyway, just as you, Brian, did for the St. Mark's Master Plan Committee meeting. I would much rather see a diverse group of at-large representatives on the board. I'm not necessarily sure on the 9 at this point until we see the makeup of the board. I think I would like to see more members with some type of construction management background on this as well, a very diverse board. So on a 9 number, until I actually know what the makeup of the board is, it's hard to say. One of the things I would like to suggest is, I know this was advertised through the town website. In order to reach a broader scope of people, and again, this is me asking, I don't know the answer to this, is there a way to utilize other media sources through the town, potentially through the blog, and it may have been done there, I may be mistaken. Recreation has a list, and I know the town has a list of email addresses. I'd just like to try to broaden the scope of who potentially could sit on this, based on the Public Safety Committee that did a wonderful job that's here, but I'd kind of like to see a broader base of more diverse as well. But potentially, again, someone with construction management, construction experience, just for a very well-rounded, diverse board. I think it better serves the taxpayer as well as us as selectmen, so.
Well, I know that when we post something up on the website, you know, My Southborough, Metro West Daily News, Mrs. Hale handles, she's our Twitter person, and she tries to, she's very diligent with it. She tries to make sure she keeps it going so people, you know, continue to come and look. And both My Southborough, Metro West Daily News usually grab whatever's posted and gets that out into the, you know, Twitter sphere, so to speak. So, but if there's more, you know, that we can do, I know that, you know, we try to do some outreach, you know, for people who may be interested. We don't specifically, you know, target a certain email list or anything like that to try and you know, and usually we kind of get what we're looking for. I don't disagree with you, you and I had this conversation already, that I think that, you know, there needs to be some construction experience. You know, the board had talked about moving, you know, potentially, you know, moving over some of the study committee members over onto this. And the one thing that we don't have, you know, really is that construction experience, and that probably is something that, you know, we should look for.
Yep.
You know, some of those slots.
Yep. I agree. I think those are good points. So, Mr. Rooney?
Yes, good evening. John Rooney, Edgewood Road. First of all, Ms. Brascio, congratulations. I'm sure you're going to do a great job. I wanted to speak briefly about the charge, because the charge as written, I think it needs a bit more refinement, and let me just explain why. When the town voted for this project, both at town meeting and at the ballot, it was voted not just the public safety facility, but the public safety facility and the disposition of the remaining part of the land in terms of the continued maintenance of the golf course. So I think, at least it's my opinion, that the charge should be all-inclusive, not just for the public safety facility, but also taking care of and being cognizant of the concerns of the golf course in terms of the renovations that need to be conducted. In addition to that, the board, at that time I was on it, we made certain representations and assurances to the abutters of the golf course with respect to the, you know, trying to construct the facility and change the golf course in such a way that would not impact their property interests. And I think that should also be written into the charge as part of the committee's overall charge on this project. I don't think there's been a more important committee in terms of the towns presently and into the future, perhaps other than the Main Street Committee, because this committee ultimately is going to impact future generations as to the decisions it makes. And I do think there should be a Board of Selectmen representative, and let me tell you why. Because the Board of Selectmen made certain representations, certain assurances while we were campaigning for this passage. So I think it would be important that there be a representative on the board to respond to the residents with regards to those types of commitments that we made. So I do think a presence of a board member is important. And finally, I agree with Ms. Brascio insofar as I understand that the public safety members are willing to transfer right over, and they should be congratulated for that. But I do think that this committee screams out for someone with construction management background, and absent, I think that should be the #1 priority in appointing someone to this committee. Someone who's done this before, someone who's gone through the RFP procedures before, and someone who can understand the entire scope of the project. Because it only makes sense, and again, this is one person's opinion, that when you have the large machinery out there doing the work for the public safety facility, that they also do the work that's needed for the golf course at the same time. So that maybe should be incorporated into the entire RFP at the same time. So that's kind of, I just wanted to give you my feedback on the existing charge and some thoughts on the composition of the committee moving forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
If I may, Mr. Rooney, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you mind?
No,
I
I don't
mean-
mind you at all.
The board, this board, and with your effort as well, we're very involved. And I'm not suggesting that we're not gonna be involved. My concern is if we have a member on the board and 2 others choose to show up, it could be questioned as a quorum without posting a meeting. So that's why I'm saying, pull ourselves out of it, post meetings and attend if,
Yeah, I just think it's important to have some degree of responsibility or some degree of accountability on behalf of your board in making the decisions that this committee is going to make. And if that necessitates a parallel designated meeting so that you don't run afoul of any open meeting laws or whatever,
Right.
I think it'd be worth that effort. But I do think a representative of the chief executive board should be on this committee because it's such an important committee.
okay, thank you.
So one of the, Mr. Wilson, please.
Good evening. My name is John Wilson, 4 Middle Road. I don't know if this will be the only opportunity that the golf group has to speak to this specific issue about the launching of all the ideas that came out of town meeting, but I'll take the opportunity anyway. To me, town meeting and all the 600 or 700 people that were there, 91% of them in one form or another agreed that under Articles 1 and 2, it included the continuation of the golf course with the conservation restriction. And I'm hopeful that all of these things are included in whatever the documents are that we go forward with in terms of the bidding process, requests for proposals, and that they don't lose sight of the fact that there will be some minimal golf course redesign issues, including expertise to help us with that. Clubhouse, moving the clubhouse, the green, a tee, the water, the electricity, the septic system, the parking, and with the goal of uninterrupted golf during the project development, which is not going to be easy, but we think at least it's necessary to maintain the membership and the greens fee play of the golf course as time goes on. So what I'm going to be doing is continuing to try to advance the interests of the golfers in the major project, which of course is the building, but not to lose sight of the fact that these were included in all those discussions at town meeting and the dozens of meetings prior to that. So you may be seeing us again at some of these meetings. And I'd like to ask my friend and colleague Andre Fortin just to say a couple of words, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman,
Sure,
about this same issue.
sure.
Thank you.
Andre Fortin, 6 Ward Road. Continue on the same vein about making sure we include the golf course as part of the overall project. We think it would be very important, and the most logical way to proceed would be for when we get to the bidding process or the request for a proposal, when it goes out, that it includes a request for whoever the respondents will be to include a plan to make the golf course whole again. Seeing as that when we put the building facility in, we're going to be chopping up the existing golf course. So the task would be for the respondent to include a plan to make the golf course whole again, without getting into specifics, and come up with some concept plans that would be able to do that. In essence, it's really not, it's only a small portion of the overall project. The main project will be the building facility. But certainly going forward, it makes sense to us to include that parcel of land, that the rest of the property, in the overall RFP going forward, so that we can have a look at these concepts and these plans that they come up with, and then make the best decision going forward.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So, I don't disagree with anything that has been said as yet, but I'm going to defer to Mr. Malinowski before I continue.
Sorry, not to, Jason Malinowski, William Clear Lane, and Chair of the Public Safety Study Committee. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that was said in front of me. The one thing I just would like to remind the board and also call attention to is an email that the committee sent to all of you on behalf of the committee in terms of our thoughts on this, is that we absolutely believe it needs to be studied. But town meeting only appropriated funds for the purchase of the land and the construction of the facility. So I think there's a very important step that needs to be undertaken here, that if the town is planning to continue the golf course operations, and I think it makes a ton of sense from Synergy's perspective of you have one loader out there, you continue the process. That funding is not included in anything that the Public Safety Study Committee got up in front of town meeting to talk about. And obviously, there's certainly, I'm no expert in CPC funding, but there may be avenues that way to fund anything that needs to be done. So while we as a committee agree that that needs to be undertaken and that sort of expertise needs to be added to any potential building committee or a separate committee, our view was more of a separate committee that then comes together with the building committee. I just wanted to remind you before you deliberate on that point.
So, Mr. Rooney.
While I agree 99% of the time with Mr. Malinowski, in this instance I don't. I think that the reason that town meeting approved Articles 1 and 2 was because we came to a consensus, a compromise that included a resolution and a conservation restriction on the golf course. So I'm not as confident in saying that the money was allocated just for the public safety facility. The way that I would posit it is that had the golf course and the conservation restriction not been part of Articles 1 and 2, more likely than not, they would have failed the town meeting and they would not have made it to the ballot box. Therefore, again, perhaps in disagreement with Mr. Malinowski, I believe town meeting and the voters have spoken in terms of allocating and dispersing that money for the overall project. The overall project includes the public safety building and the golf course.
Okay. So, and I guess while I may agree with you a great deal of the time as well, I think it also is true that what Mr. Malinowski says, that the estimates that were presented, the numbers put up on the screen, did not include, numbers for golf course construction, because they just weren't known at the time. And it's not that, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said, and, reasons why people in town supported the town meeting articles and the ballot initiative as well. And I guess that's a question in my mind, is whether the charge for this committee ought to include that golf course consideration, and there was also consideration with Woodward School as well about potential driveway improvements there. I think that, certainly once the project gets underway and people with, much greater knowledge on, construction and, the schedules that need to be followed, and whether everything is lumped into one contract, whether there's an initial site development contract that's issued first, so that the golf course can get taken care of, and then a separate contract with the school. That's a question that, it's an option that is out there as well. It may be proven to be best that it's all done under one contract. Those, aren't issues that we're gonna resolve tonight. The people that need to make those decisions aren't on board and working for us as yet. But certainly I think we need to come to a consensus sooner rather than later as to whether we want to include that additional charge in the work of the Public Safety Building Committee, or keep it as a separate committee. My initial take would be to follow the advice of the Public Safety Study Committee and maintain it and keep it separate for now, but again, wholeheartedly agreeing and understanding that at some point in time that we have to come together with the group interested in maintaining the golf course, because that was clearly a key component that the people in this town wanted to maintain as well.
All right, as an advocate for the golf course and the open space, and I agree with Mr. Rooney and others that, we really came to the conclusion the evening of town meeting that we were gonna work together, but I have to go back to, we haven't identified sight lines. I'm not an engineer either. The sight lines or even the footprint of what we own for a public safety location, that to go to the next step, I don't think we're there yet. It's not that we can't get there, but I don't think we're at that stage that we can identify where everything else is gonna go until we identify what's necessary for developing a public safety facility, whether it be driveways, septic system, and then work with the school on access. That, to me, those are all secondary, but the golf course is a big part of it. But until we find out what the perimeter needs are for that fire station, I don't think we can address the other issue yet.
I also agree with Mrs. Faniff that I also agree with Mr. Rooney. I think this is a very important component. I mean, I wasn't on the board at that time, but I know everything that went in and what town meeting was assured at that time. And I'm not sure at what point the golf course representation comes in. I agree that we don't know the footprint yet, so we don't know as far as how it's going to affect the golf course. But I think they need a voice as well and to be involved in this as well, because that is an important piece, and that is what town meeting was assured was going to happen. So I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Rooney on that. I just don't know at what part we bring that into the process. But I don't know if it's through some type of subcommittee or actually through this process from the beginning. That's, I guess, more of a question than a comment, but I think it's very important that they're involved in this as well.
Okay. So, go ahead, Mark.
So just a suggestion, if the board is considering removing, the selectman rep and the advisory rep and making it 9 members of the community, 9 voting members, you could take those other 2 seats and focus them on the golf course if you wanted to try and include those interests on the building committee, so that you would have, 2 that really have that focus for that other piece of the collaboration. It's just a suggestion.
Good idea as well.
Can I ask another question? Excuse me. If I'm out of turn, I
ahead.
apologize.
Go
I agree with that, but then we're faced with the makeup of the balance of the committee then. You've got 7 members, and I think we all agree that there needs to be some construction, project management, whatever experience in that as well. So I guess we as a board need to discuss, how we want the makeup of the committee to be. So I'm not sure. I'm honestly ready to do that tonight. So I Again, I don't know if that helps, but.
All right. Mr. Goodney?
Pete Goodney, 5 Sunrise Drive, Public Safety Study Committee. I just want to reiterate some of the things that we did in the committee. We hired a consultant, a professional consultant, so we could get accurate pricing on what it would cost to build a public safety building. We also directed the consultant to put that building in a position that the option to save the golf course would be there for the town. It's my recollection, understanding that there was no money allocated to actually do that, that would have to be done at a later date, so the town choose to do that. But we preserve the option to preserve that golf course. That's what my understanding of the town meeting was. Certainly, if we were voting on something that was to save that golf course, it's gonna be, I don't know how much it's gonna cost. The town should have hired a consultant, and there should have been a number at town meeting, so we'd know how much it's gonna cost. But the only numbers that I saw that were provided were for the building and to buy the land. There was no numbers provided to reconstruct that golf course. But we did provide the ability to do that. We put the building in a certain way, and the people that we talked to also said that it was possible to do, but the money was not appropriated, as I recall.
Mr. Rooney?
I don't think the golf course is an option. I think it's part and parcel of the overall passage of the article. Second thing is, the cost, you're right, the cost has not been factored in, but when the bid packet goes out, it would seem to only make sense to include the work that needs to be done on the golf course and get that information back, because at the end of the day, we don't know if we're talking about a $20,000 added cost or a $200,000 added cost. But it would seem to make sense that when the bid goes out, consideration for the renovations to the golf course be part and parcel of that bid when it comes back, so that if ultimately additional monies are needed, an article or some other vehicle can be brought forward for that funding. But I do think it should all be part and parcel of the first go-round.
Okay. Mr. Perry?
Sorry, David Perry, 22 Main Street. Congratulations to our new member.
Thank you.
Look, it's perfectly clear, you know, the vote at town meeting was a vote to continue the golf course. It was actually, you know, John, you wrote the article. Article 1 was rewritten to incorporate Article 3, which was a continuation of the golf course with conservation restrictions, and Freddie Gillespie, you know, put in additional language that it actually tied it to the site plan. That was the vote. The site plan, you know, it's already the perimeter, you know, whatever it is, this, you know, the footprint, but, you know, you are tied to the site plan. That was part of the vote at town meeting. There's not the ability to redo this site plan, you know, with some other configuration. That is part of the vote. It was put in writing. It's a pity we don't have the vote right here, but it's very specific. You know, the golf course will continue. There will be conservation restrictions. The site plan is part of the vote at town meeting. So there's no doubt about that. Now, the question is, of course, you're absolutely correct over here, that the money, this is the money issue. The money issue is a separate thing, because they just calculated the cost of police fire. That's the problem. There is missing money. But don't let's sort of confuse the issue whether or not there's going to be a working golf course, whether or not the site plan is part of the deal. That was a vote. You know, we can't alter that. The question is missing money. How do we get this missing money? Now, let me remind you that, you know, we on our sort of, whatever we call ourselves, this sort of golf group, you know, we had the services for free of Mr. Brian Silver, who's a world-class expert on redesigning golf courses. He flew up, as you know, on his own dime in the middle of January to sort of explain how it could be done. That site plan is a result of his expertise. You know, moving all the golf parking north, for instance, north of the line, is absolutely critical, he said, fundamentally critical. Building a high berm and with trees on top between the police station and golf course, absolutely critical. When you're playing golf, you don't want to look at a police station. So all of these things.
I don't think anybody's disagreeing.
Okay, no, I know. The dilemma is, I don't want to sort of get involved in this committee thing. The dilemma is the missing money, and when are we going, how? Maybe we should have a special town meeting. When we get an estimate, how do we get an estimate? Should we hire a golf course architect, for instance, and get an estimate I mean, you know, for instance, I'm throwing things out here, you
Mhm.
know, because tons of their work with bulldozers is on the golf course. The septic system, the drainage ponds,
Yeah.
the pipes, and all this sort of stuff. So maybe we could, maybe we need to hire a golf course architect to come up with an estimate and go to a special town meeting and say we need 200, 500 grand, or I don't know.
All right.
I just
All
throw
right.
it out.
Wait,
So,
I have
go
a
ahead.
follow-up question.
Go ahead, Ms.
Mr. Perry? A question? We seldom agree. However, you did say this evening that you're aware that there was no funding approved for the golf course.
Well,
That's what
other
you said.
than the work for the septic and the drainage, which
Correct.
is on the golf
All right,
course.
I just wanted clarity. Thank you.
No, right, right.
Ms. Jazinski.
Dorianne Jasinski, 33 Presidential Drive. Congratulations, Mrs. Braccio.
Thank you.
2 points. I'm on advisory. I'm not speaking as an advisory member tonight. I'm speaking as a taxpayer. But when, at town meeting, we voted a budget of $22.6 million for the public safety building and $5 million roughly to purchase 4.5, 4.7?
4.5.
Okay, to purchase the land. That was it. It did not include any money for the golf course. Now, when we did the warrant articles, yes, it was combined that the town did want to save that land. We wanted a CR, we wanted to protect it, but we did not give any money for the golf course. That has to be handled at some other point, but that has nothing to do with this committee at this point, so.
Okay.
I just wanted to clear that.
All right. So all that having been said, is there anything that we do want to, any changes that we want to agree to tonight? Do we want to make a decision on membership? Are we in a position to do that? Do we want to think through this more, reconvene at our June 6th meeting, discuss this further?
We don't have Mr. Colander on the phone this evening, right?
Correct, correct.
So
Right.
we wait on this.
Yep.
Make the changes that each of us feel individually for them to mark and see if any of them mesh, and then take a position when Mr.
Yep.
Colander's here.
In the meantime, can we also direct the town administrator to proceed with an OPM, an owner's project manager contract?
Yep.
For advertising?
Yes.
So we can have that prepared?
We can do that. I have a draft. Westboro has been very active in replacing their buildings, building new fire station, rehabbing some of their existing buildings, so they have an RFP that was issued for an OPM. We'll go through that and work on that. It's something that's going to be required to be placed in the central register. It's a 30-day requirement before we can open bids, so that isn't going to hold up anything at that point. Hopefully the committee can be up and running by the time those bids come in, so the committee can be used to help evaluate that person, because that's going to be an integral position to the success of the project.
All right, so on June 6th, I'll make a suggestion that we approve the charge of the committee. We make appointments to the committee, and between now and June 6th, we need another deadline, that we will solicit individuals from the community to come forward and put their names in, with
Absolutely.
technical backgrounds, as Ms.
So you need another deadline past this Friday?
Well, we have 3 weeks now, right?
You do?
At least another week.
Another week?
Extended a week? Sounds good. With a special call out to those with construction management experience.
Yep,
Large
absolutely.
projects.
Large,
I think
exactly.
that would be very helpful.
Yep.
Okay? Very good. We're a little bit late, 7:15. Why don't we go to the 7 o'clock hearing for the new liquor license application? Representatives from OLA here? Yes, if you could please come forward, have a seat at the table here. If you could just state your name and address for the record. Welcome. It's not on. There should be a button on the side to slide. Excellent. Okay, Mark, is there a notice that we need to read, or?
So notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of Mass General Law that Hola LLC, naming Roberto Leon as manager of record, has applied for an annual on-premises Section 12 restaurant all alcoholic beverages license on the premises located at 154 Turnpike Road, Unit 150, Southborough, Mass., described as 1,495 square feet, 4 rooms, 2 entrances, 2 exits, proposed seating capacity of 50, proposed occupancy of 77. Public hearing will be held in Thomas W. McAuliffe Hearing Room, 2nd floor of the Southborough Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. On Tuesday, May 16th, 2017, at 7 p.m. Board of Selectmen, Southborough Licensing Authority, is published in the Metro West Daily News on May 2nd.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Leon, welcome.
Hi, how you guys doing? My name is Roberto Leon. I live in Rhode Island.
Very good. So if you could just give a brief update to the board and presentation on what you are proposing, please.
Yeah, so we're planning on having 50-seat restaurant, including a bar, and just just a family atmosphere Mexican restaurant. We have a kids menu. We do things like that, and regular tacos and things. As far as the menu goes, I don't. What else would you like me to discuss as far as the restaurant goes? I'm sorry, a little nervous.
No, relax. So welcome to town. I know that you do have other restaurants
That
as
is-
well, I guess, and from what I was able to see online, they've been very successful in
Yeah.
the past, so.
Yeah, so we operate, me meaning myself and my business partner operate a restaurant in Braintree called Cielo. We've been there probably a year and 7 months. I think we opened October of 2015. So yeah, so a year and 7 months, something like that. We recently were voted best of Boston for Mexican food. So, I also operate a restaurant in Warwick, one in Smithfield, and we recently opened up a taco shop in Providence. So all family restaurant, close early, no rowdy crowds or anything like that.
Very good. And will you yourself be the main person working at
Yeah,
this
for the
facility as
for
it
the
starts up?
yes, correct. As it starts up, and then hopefully find someone local to really hand the reins over to. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll be the one there.
Other questions from the board, Ms. Fan?
The seating arrangement that's in the diagram,
Yes.
there's 38, and the application says 50.
There's 38 seats on the diagram.
Well, I'm just counting what I see.
How many seats do you have at the bar? Is it 18?
Count the bar?
Yes.
Okay.
And the proposed occupancy, 77, is that something you received from the town, or is that a potential occupancy in that site?
For that, we kind of figured like employees and everything, like as far as so seating capacity would be the 50, and then if we had a small wait or something like that, and then our kitchen staff and our serving staff would be.
So this occupancy hasn't been calculated by the building inspector yet?
I wouldn't. My GC would know about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Brascio?
I don't really have any questions. I would just like to welcome you to Southborough.
Thank you very much.
We definitely need a Mexican restaurant in Southborough, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Thank you.
But I think my other fellow members have addressed the questions I had, so thank you.
All right.
No, and again, there's excellent restaurants in town, but there certainly are a lot of people that, when they do go out for dinner, they do leave our town to go elsewhere. So it's good to see
Okay.
people looking to make the investment in our community.
Yeah.
So, is there a motion? Or actually, let me open up. Are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor of granting the, or is there a motion to grant the license application?
I'll make a motion that the board grant an application for a retail alcohol beverage license to, I'm trying to find the name.
Ola.
Ola.
Ola located at 154
Turnpike Road, yeah.
in Southborough. And the hours of operation, as indicated on the handout that we had this evening, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sunday, 11 a.m. I'll go with Sunday through Saturday, 11 a.m. Sunday, 9 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 10 p.m. closing. Friday, Saturday closing at 11 p.m.
That is correct, yes.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, welcome.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
When do you open?
Exactly.
Yeah, open now?
We're hoping, if everything goes well, we're hoping for last week of June, first week of July, around there. If it's the first week of July, we'd definitely wait until after the 4th of July.
Yep.
We always like to open on a Monday, so all of our staff can get their feet wet for the weekend, things like that, get
Very good.
accustomed to the new surroundings and everything. But yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you
Good
very
luck.
much, guys. Looking
Wish you
forward
well.
to being here. Thanks.
Let's see. Continuing on the agenda, Chairman's report. The one thing that I wanted to note, that it is common practice for the first Board of Selectmen meeting following an election for an item to be on the agenda for board reorganization. And I had every intention of having it on tonight's agenda and was actually on the draft agenda until I learned that Mr. Kalenda could not be here in person for that. I think it's best to have that discussion while all four of us are here present in the room. So it'll be my plan to have that on the June 6th agenda. So I'm not, this isn't a power play that I continue. I have, want to open it up to everybody, so, but in recognition of Mr. Kalenda not being here, I thought it best to wait until June 6th. And that's all that I have.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of items this evening. The one item that I have listed on the agenda, we are at that time of year where we're beginning to discuss annual reappointments, which normally are done by the board in June. The past couple of years, we have broken them up into staff appointments and then the appointments for boards and committees. What I wanted to do this evening is simply present to you the list of staff appointments for fiscal year 2018. I'm not seeking the board to approve those this evening. I want you to take a look through the list and see if there's any that you would like more information on, if there's any questions that you have on them, and we can bring that back at the next meeting for you to have your questions answered and go through and make those appointments as necessary. Just quickly, again, these are positions such as the alternate building inspector, animal control, electrical inspectors, assistant town accountant, assistant town administrator, assistant treasurer collector, the members of the police department, the officers and sergeants. Those positions you will notice expire in 19. Those are done every 2 years. So we didn't do this last year. We'll do it this year, and then we'll do it again in 2 years. Positions, ethics commission liaison, and obviously a lot of our legal services, our sexual harassment officer, special legal counsels, superintendent, I'm not sure why that's on here. Superintendent of Public Works shouldn't be on here. Town council, tree warden, and veterans grave officer. So those are the things. So take a look through the list. If there are items that you would like more information on, specifically something on the agenda for the next meeting, we can do that, but that will be on to be approved. At the next meeting, I'll have the list of boards and committees for you to consider at the June 2nd meeting. And then on June 16th, the board can vote to do your reappointments at that time. Okay. Just a couple of other quick items. I did receive some correspondence from the principal at Algonquin, and they are going to be having a very special Memorial Day event planned in partnership with the Mass Fallen Heroes organization, and it's coming up very quickly. They're hosting the event May 18th, so in 2 days, from 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning in the auditorium, and they'll have the pep band, the boys varsity hockey team. Selected classes are going to participate. It's a statewide education program designed to increase awareness about the sacrifices made by mass servicemen and women and celebrate their contributions. The keynote speaker is Lindsay Arsenault. She's a 2011 graduate, Algonquin, and she's the sister of Specialist Brian Arsenault, 2004 grad, who was killed in action while serving in Afghanistan in 2014. And so they've extended an invitation to myself as well as the board. If there's anyone who is able to attend, I do plan on being there. So I wanted to make sure I extended that to the board as well.
Thank you.
We
Just
did,
verify the times for that, I'm sorry.
absolutely, 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning on Thursday in the auditorium at Algonquin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We did receive, DPW Superintendent Karen Galligan forwarded me today that we received notification from Mass DEP that Southborough has been awarded their drinking water program has awarded us a outstanding performance award for 2016. We've achieved one of the top scores in the state in the consecutive system category for the public water system awards. It's very difficult, as they say, to keep up with the ever-evolving federal and state regulations, and so they have recognized our water system for outstanding performance and achievement in the past year. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Karen and her staff do with that regard. One final item, normally these are listed on the consent agenda, however, they just came in since the agenda was set. I'll let the board decide whether they'd like to take action this evening. Normally we get, this is around this time of year, donations, expected donations from Fay School and from St. Mark's. St. Mark's has sent us a check in the amount of $35,000, which is their annual donation to the town. And then I also have checks from St. Mark's and from Fay School in the amount of $10,000 each with their annual payments towards the aerial ladder truck donation. So if the board would like to accept those this evening, we can get those deposited. If you would like to have them formally put on an agenda, we can do that too.
We can accept those this evening.
Agree.
Sounds great.
Yep.
Thank you to those agents, to those groups.
And at the same time, can we do number 4? Accept New England Center of Children
Yes.
pilot payment for $52,036.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you again to the New England Center for Children. It's greatly appreciated. So we still have under consent agenda items 1. Actually, can we do
We
1
hold
with
one?
just,
I
do we
don't
need
think we
Dan
can do
here
it.
for,
Lisa can vote on,
One.
she can vote on 3. I'm sorry, she can vote on the minutes, even though she was not a member at the time.
And I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 2nd, 2017.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I watched it anyway, so.
Item 3, approve petition to legislature for special act regarding the public safety project. This was included in our packet. We were holding off on sending this pending the vote at the ballot. With that successful vote, I move that we petition the legislature for the special act.
I'll second it for conversation. Town council reviewed this, right?
He did, yes.
Okay, I see his name on it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 6, approve Mass DOT contract for Chapter 90 reimbursement.
I'll second that for conversation.
Sure, the
Okay.
purpose of the contract is every year the town receives Chapter 90 funding from the state. Mass DOT requires every 10 years that we sign a new contract with them that, we'll accept this money and that it'll be spent in the appropriate manner designated for Chapter 90 funds. It's really just an authorization that we're going to do with it what the state expects us to do with it.
All right, question. On
Sure.
the top, after Karen Galligan's name, it says contractor vendor code. Is that the town of Southborough?
Contract,
It says VC.
yes, that
That references the town of Southborough.
that does.
And we have no pending contracts now that are in place prior to June 30th, 2017, under the X where it says contract amendment?
No, this is going to replace the contract that's been in place.
All right, so there's nothing outstanding, everything's funded that we have out there?
That's correct.
Okay. And I will go on the record saying I did not open up any of these websites that they're making reference to, because they can change at any time, correct?
You'll have to be more specific as to what,
If it makes reference to, if you want more information, go to www.mass.gov
Yes.
and OSC, but it also goes on to say that this contract can change.
The requirements, yes,
Can
over the
change.
course of 10 years,
it
the
says
requirement,
contract on
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Okay, so,
There's always a caveat.
correct, all right, that's why I didn't go and research it all.
Okay.
Other questions?
No, just make note of that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 7, accept resignation of Lisa Braccio from Open Space Preservation Commission, Open Space Design Bylaw Subcommittee, and Deed Research Subcommittee.
Second, with
Second.
regrets.
With regrets and with congratulations
Yes.
on the reasons why. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Lastly, appoint Lisa Braccio to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Other matters properly before the board. One item we have not discussed yet is the public meeting decorum. Maybe late 2016, early 2017, our board had passed a meeting decorum policy for Board of Selectmen meetings. We had discussions at the time that this is something that we ought to pass down to all boards and committees, and this ought to be applicable to all boards and committee meetings in town. I think that this has really come to light recently in light of some behavior that I had heard of at a Public Works Planning Board meeting. So I would strongly suggest that we take this opportunity now to distribute that decorum policy down to all the boards and committees, specifically transmit it to the chairs of those boards and committees, and have, encourage them to encourage those that attend their meetings to, to practice the language that's included in that decorum. I mean, everybody's opinion matters. I think everybody's opinion ought to be heard. I think that it ought to be done in a very respectful manner. There are many, many complicated issues, complex issues with strong arguments on both sides, and those arguments need to be made, but they need to be done respectfully to all involved. So I would like to see that happen, so.
And please share that with all the department heads too, that might be attending
Yes.
a meeting, so that they're aware of it also.
Desiree Asselbekian, 137 Woodland Road. As somebody who has spoken relative to this policy in its infancy and as you've debated it, I suggested that you potentially didn't need it because the policy, in essence, just states what Mass General Law states in accordance with the open meeting laws. But in recent events, in the tone of the of public meetings, really over the past 2 years, has taken quite a substantial turn, I think, for the worst in how people behave toward not just elected officials, but appointed officials and town employees. And that really was brought to light at the Public Works Planning Board meeting a couple of weeks ago. Well, I appreciate that you're wanting to disseminate this to other boards and committees that aren't necessarily under your charge, right? The ZBA is under your charge, for example, so you can tell them, hey, listen, you have to abide by this policy. But any other elected board is not under your charge. So you would, in essence, be asking them to adopt the policy that you have created. I would contend that, the timeliness of that or the suggestion that they do that, they don't really have to. But I contend that there is an absolute necessity for this policy straight down the board. And I would highly recommend that the board tonight, your board, the selectmen, make a decision to enact this policy in any town building, municipally owned or school, well, you can't really do it to the schools, but any town building that holds a public meeting, regardless of what public meeting it is, whether it's under your charge or not. If you are meeting in a municipal building, you should have to adhere to your policy. I don't know if that's something that can be done. I don't know whether you'd need to talk to Mr. Cipriano about that. But if it can be done, I would urge you and suggest you to do it as soon as possible. So I appreciate your time tonight and hope that that is something that can happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I don't know if you want to offer that or.
No, I would, to Ms. Hasselbekian's point, I mean, the Board of Selectmen control all of the town properties, and you control the town buildings. So, you know, I'm not quite sure it's even a question for council if the board, you know, so voted, you know, that this policy and this decorum policy applies to all meetings held within municipal buildings on municipal property. I think that'd be an appropriate vote.
And if for some reason we have a committee or elected board that disagrees, I think they need to respond to us by our next meeting. As to the reason why.
I agree.
I agree. I agree. So I will move that we take that action.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Takes us to public comment, if there is any. Mr. Litt.
Tim Litt, 148 Woodland Road. I just wanted to take a minute and say thanks to Tom LaFlamme for the work he did recently. Since the Newtown website came up, there's been an effort to try and get notifications of meetings and agendas and stuff published. Nothing happened. Nothing continued to happen until the past 10 days or so. And now we're at the point where, by my count, there are 57 organizations and 100 and some odd different topics that people can get notices on. I think that's a great improvement for the public, and I think that the effort deserves a bit of note.
Thank you.
Especially for the
Thank you
people
very
who are
much.
not here.
Thank you very much for doing that. Other public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.